Thank you very much, Jeff. And welcome and good morning. And hello online. I want to set some context, so I'm going to make a few comments, and then I'm going to transform myself into the guy that's going to give the speech, and then the speech will begin. Because this presentation is a reprise of my keynote speech to about 1,000 Toastmasters at their World Convention in Nashville, Tennessee a couple of weeks ago. And let me tell you a little bit about that. There are three entities to kind of file in your mind. One is Toastmasters International. Another one's the National Speakers Association, professional speakers. And another one's the Junior Chamber of Commerce, commonly called the JCs. Okay? I was a member of the JCs age 26. I joined in Little Rock, Arkansas. And the JCs, at the time I was involved, had 356,000 members, U.S. only, not worldwide. And today the JCs have 12,000. So their world has changed quite radically, right? The purpose of JCs is like Rotary or Lions or Optimist or whatever. It's a civic club, but they have a very unique purpose. They were formed in 1920 in St. Louis for the purpose of leadership training through community service. So they're not a community service organization, they're a leadership training organization that does projects in the community as their homework or their lab. So everything they do is designed to teach you project planning, communication, motivating volunteers, finding resources, problem solving, you know. And there have been millions and millions and millions of graduates of the JC's process, age 18 to 40 over the years. So today it's kind of fading away, but when I was involved it was mega big because I'm a prototype of the baby boom. I'm not a prototype, stereotype. I was born in 1946, first year of the baby boom. Graduated high school, 1964, last year of the baby boom. 78 million people in between those. So whatever happened to me, or happens to me for that matter, about 78 million other people are going to have that experience very soon, right? So I was there during the peak of that. NSA is the National Speakers Association. It is to professional speaking what the American Medical Association would be to doctors, or the Institute of CPAs to accountants, okay? So NSA has about, let's say 3,500 members. It's gone up and down depending on the economy and the things like that. But I got involved when they had 200 members, 1976. I'll tell you the story. Toastmasters today has 360,000 members in 16,600 clubs in 149 countries around the world. Excuse me, we're stepping up. So they filled the void that the JCs used to fill. What is Toastmasters? Toastmasters is an organization that's sole purpose is communication and leadership skills. So every Toastmasters club, at every meeting, every person in attendance speaks. And the purpose of that is to get them comfortable speaking to a group and to teach them the techniques for all the various types of speaking. So that's Toastmasters. I'm not a Toastmaster, but I was the keynote speaker at their World Convention. I was the keynote speaker, good morning. I was the keynote speaker at their World Convention in 1995. I was the recipient of their sort of a Lifetime Achievement Award that's given to non-Toastmasters called the Golden Gavel Award in 2001. And that's gone to Walter Cronkite and Earl Nightingale and Zig Ziglar and Tony Robbins and Jeannie Robertson and on and on and on. Big, big names, way bigger than me. And I received that at the millennium year, 2001. And so I gave the main stage keynote speech at Toastmasters back in '95, and then I gave the main stage speech in 2001 in Anaheim, and then the week before last I gave the main stage opening keynote speech in 2022. Boom. So this is very cool and thrilling for me, but I'm not a member of Toastmasters International. I admire what they do. I just don't happen to be part of that organization. I am part of this, and I'm a past national president and a number of other things. And JC's, I went from the local level all the way to the national headquarters in charge of leadership training when they had 356,000 members. So that's context. Now, the people in Nashville, there were close to 1,000 of them, somewhere between 800 and 1,000 people, and they were there to celebrate Toastmasters Global Convention. And when I was introduced, the introducer had a very specific plan that I had handed him. And I said, I need you to be, really focused on this. He said, okay. And so he steps up and he says, ladies and gentlemen, well, wait a minute, let me go live on this. Consider this the speech, okay? I'm going to be the introducer, and then I'm going to come back as me. So the introducer comes out. He's the president of the organization. And he says, our speaker, Jim Cathcart, was our keynote speaker in 1995, 27 years ago, 95. And in 2001, he was our recipient of the Golden Gavel Award. And many of you in this audience today were there. And here we are in 2022. We asked him to come back. And so welcome with me, after 21 years, your keynote speaker, Jim Cathcart. Yeah, there you go. Thunderous applause. Okay. I walked out and I looked at him and I said, as I was saying, and I really thought that was going to bring the house down. I thought, what a clever introduction, right? Because I'd seen some people do that technique in the past, and it was just killed. Well, no. I came out and I said, as I was saying, and a few people laughed, like you politely did this morning, thank you. But it flopped. But that's okay, because I had planned for that eventuality. So I said, here's how I did it. I said, as I was saying, in 2001, there are two ways to reach your goals. One is, as an arrow shooting at your target, and the other is as a magnet attracting what you want. I recommend both. Become the person who would attract the results you want, and you don't have to worry which of the other two is paying off. See, when you are shooting at your goal, when you're working toward that goal and you've got your plan all lined out and you've got all your resources together, all the energy, all the initiative, and all the accuracy has to come from you, directly from you. But when you develop the qualities of the person you want to become, then you attract what you want, and it requires at that moment none of your energy. So that's been my mantra all throughout my career. Become a magnet for what you want. I haven't used those words exactly. I've said, become the person who would achieve your goals, and you get the goals anyway. Nice byproduct, all right? Two ways to approach this. One is approaching the focus on the message itself. And if you work really hard, Leanne, on your message, and you get all the details in there and all the stories you wanted to tell, and you work on the gestures and the staging and the choreography, at the end of all that, you know what you'll have? A good speech. But if you work on the messenger also, what you'll have is a full career of good speeches, because it's the delivery vehicle that determines whether the speech hits its mark, right? So that was my message. And I said to the folks, I said, I have a dilemma. I'm standing here 46 years into my speaking career, 3,300 paid engagements all over the world, and I've got stories till the end of time. I could tell you at least 46 years of stories. But that seems awfully selfish for me to be talking about me. And then I thought, well, I'm speaking to speakers about speaking. And I've got a premise, which is become the kind of person who would achieve your goals and you get the outcomes that you were seeking as a byproduct. Then let's apply the scientific method. What do you mean by that, Jim? Well, I mean, in science, you start with a premise and then you prove or disprove your premise. All right? Premise. Gravity works. Son of a gun. It's been proven, at least for now, it still works. All right? Premise. That dog won't bite. Yet. Right? Some truths are eternal, universal, apply to everything. Some truths are situational and momentary, and you can't really invest in them nearly at the same level. All right? So, what's my premise? My premise is become the person who would achieve your goals and you get the outcomes you're dreaming of. Okay? Let's look at my career, 46 years, and see if it proves or disproves my premise. Okay? This is the Cavett Award. This is the National Speakers Association's founder, Cavett Robert, and we have an award that's a statue of him that is given to the person that's sort of the best example of the kind of person he was. Each year it's given to one person. I had the honor of receiving that in 1993. That's Bob Pike and me standing there. When I was touring China in recent years, every time I would give a speech to thousands of people, at the end of the speech they'd line up for selfies and for questions. And invariably, someone would come up to me and they say, "Teacher, master, how do I become a great speaker?" And at first I would give them whatever I thought was an appropriate answer, and then I started thinking about that, and I thought, I got a better answer. I have a better answer. Here's my better answer. Become a great person and agree to give speeches. They said, no, I mean, I know what you mean. You mean you want to focus on the message and the delivery. No, focus on the messenger. Get the messenger right, and you can be awkward, you can be inappropriate sometimes. You know, I was looking for ways to not say something blue. Anyway, you can do lots and lots of mistake making and still get away with it if you've got your stuff together. But if you don't, the most perfectly delivered message will still come across as highly mechanical, and it's not going to reach the mark. So that's what I was telling the people. And they would, huh? And I say, no, I'll explain. And then I would elaborate on that. So you can't improve the system till you improve the speakers. We learned that from Pioneer Electronics. So if we want the world to be a better place, we're going to have to work on us. Not those speakers, but these speakers, right? And this is one of the things I was telling them, especially for Toastmasters. When you're up here, you're not the only person on your team. Every one of them wants you to do well, even if they don't like you. Okay, Dickie is our speaker today, and Dickie's just not my kind of guy, and I don't think he's going to have any. I hope he does well, though, right? So they're rooting for you, even if they don't like you, and if they love you, they're more than that. You've got them all on your side. So be the kind of person they're hoping you are. So when you've got a presentation to give, think not like a speaker, think like an audience member. And say, okay, what are they looking for? What are they hoping for? What are they hoping against? You know, boy, I hope he or she doesn't do blank. I hope this has answers to our X, Y question. Fill the blanks for them. Be the kind of person they are hoping that you are. All right? And expect a whole lot more of yourself than you ever have before. But, oh no, I'm a positive thinker. Okay, granted, I'll give you that. I know many of you, and I would agree, you are a positive thinker. You're an achiever, a problem solver, a doer. not a victim, not a passenger. So that's good, but how many of you would agree with me you are underestimating yourself? I certainly am, and I find it again and again. Gee, I could have done so much more. I could have been so much better. I could have learned so much more. I could have whatever. So the reason for working on your own expectations and expanding them beyond what you can see, think to the horizon and then push beyond it just a little bit and assume you can figure it out when you get there. The reason I tell you that is that what you expect determines what you pack to be ready for. So if you know there's a formal event, you're taking a tux or an evening gown, right? If you don't think there's a formal event, you're going to show up however you're dressed and cope at the last minute. So expect more from yourself because it'll affect how you prepare, all right? And what if you don't expect much? If you don't expect much, you don't spend much time getting ready. I didn't expect much in 1974. Yeah, that's me at 200 pounds, 5 of which was mustache, in 1974 in Little Rock, Arkansas. I was a clerk at the Housing Authority, the Urban Renewal Agency. I was making $525 a month as an assistant loan specialist. Bob Moore was the loan specialist. And Bob didn't need help because Bob was bored. So imagine his assistant's day. I sat there bored to tears. Most days I was reading like books on urban renewal or whatever was handy. At one point in a 3-month period, at work, I read the Bible cover to cover. At work. I mean, there's something wrong with that job assignment, right? So I occasionally worked, but a lot of time I was just filling the day. And I was newly married, had a baby at home, my son Jim. I was, like I said, $525 a month, but I had no college degree. Had a couple years college, but I dropped out. Didn't know any achievers, so I wasn't well connected. Didn't have anybody that could open doors for me. Had never been an athlete. Had never been a scholar. And I was smoking 2 packs a day. Didn't exercise. And in the next room, I heard a radio. And on the radio was Earl Nightingale, the Dean of Personal Motivation, who was on 900 radio stations all over the world at that time. And he would get on the radio with his little 5-minute program every day and deliver pearls of wisdom, a little inspiring, what we would today probably call a meme. It's just a short little message. And that particular day in 1972, the photo was 74, but 2 years earlier, I was sitting there at the Housing Authority and heard, if you will spend 1 extra hour every day studying your chosen field, you'll be a national expert in that field in 5 years or less. You'll be an international expert in 7 years or less. 1 hour a day, focused study, 1 narrow field. And I thought, that actually works. I mean, mathematically. You figure an hour a day, 5 days a week, give myself the weekends, 50 weeks a year, 5 years, that's 1,250 hours. 1,250 hours focused on one topic, yeah, you would become quite the authority on that topic after the first few hundred hours. Then I thought, what do I want to be an expert at? Well, it certainly wasn't urban renewal. And I thought, an hour a day, I'm a government clerk, I've got 8 hours a day. I could probably do this by next Thursday, so let's see. And I thought about it for weeks, and then it hit me one day, I want to do what the guy on the radio does. I want to be an expert in the field of personal development. I didn't know what that meant. Had no idea. But I took him at his word. So I started fanatically, textbook level fanatical, studying the field of personal development. psychology, practical psychology, applied behavioral science, whatever you want to call it, how to get things done and move ahead, right? I found out that Nightingale had audio cassettes, and I listened to those for 2-3 hours a day, entire days on the weekends. It drove my wife and son nuts. My son didn't, he wasn't old enough to know much about it, but Paula, again, we're getting really, yeah, we're really going to do this. So I'd plug those cassettes into the player in the car and listen to those recordings again and again and again. Why? Well, my dad was a telephone repairman, and he was a major in the Army and served in the Pacific in World War II. And I admired my dad very much. But as far as career aspiration, he had let go of his. So he just put in his 35 years at the phone company and then retired. And Mom had grown up in rural Louisiana in a poor family, and she was mostly orphaned. Her dad was still around, but only occasionally. And so nobody around me was saying, you can do it. You know, go for the brass ring. You know, this is, dream bigger dreams. Nobody was saying that. They encouraged me to be a good person, be a good citizen, a patriot, a neighbor, you know, be a good father, whatever, but no encouragement to go for the big time in my chosen field. Fine, all right. So I hear Earl Nightingale on the radio, 1 hour a day, and I start fanatically studying the field of personal development. And then I found the JCs. This is the actual receipt. But look at it, January of 1973, $15. I joined a local JC's chapter in my neighborhood, and in the next 2 years attended 400 JC's meetings after working on weekends. Is that a fanatic? Yeah. Yeah. 400 JC's. I had found my venue. I knew, you know, these folks are all about goal setting and project planning and organizing and problem solving. And I need this. So I'm all in, and I mean all in. Out of our original 20 members in our newly formed chapter, I recruited 13, and I didn't know a soul. So all strangers, I just went out and got them, and we formed our chapter. They said, okay, you ought to be president. No, I don't know how to do that. So I became one of the officers. And then I became the guy in charge of leadership training discussions, which was a facilitated training class. And I got the leader's guide and read it cover to cover and did all that. And I just kept doing everything I could do in the JCs. Well, I became the district director in charge of 5 chapters, the regional guy, and then the state chairman in charge of leadership training for all 280 chapters in Arkansas. So I've literally been in every town, not just city, every town in Arkansas, including Evening Shade, population 30. I've been in Y City, Pencil Bluff, New Native, Fox, 56, Snowball, and Little Rock, where I grew up. All right, so JC's became my vehicle. And then one day I got an unexpected phone call. Jim, this is Don Varnador at the U.S. JC's headquarters in Tulsa, Oklahoma. How would you like to be a full-time JC? I said, doing what? He said, does it matter? I said, no. And he said, seriously? I said, seriously. How? How do I do this? How do I turn this into my paying business? He said, come to Tulsa and interview for the position of national chairman or program manager in charge of leadership training. The next day I was in Tulsa. I got the job. Now I'm making $1,000 a month. Now think about that. So what? So what? That was a 100% increase in income. And I went from being in charge of nothing to be in charge of a nation in the field that I loved the most, that I was spending all my spare time studying anyway. So this was like dying and going to heaven. I was thrilled. And that whole JC's ride, all my arrow work was at the local, regional, and state level. But my big moment came from the magnetism they called me. Wow. So, had a good run at JC's. By the way, years after I left them, I left the headquarters in 1977. On almost 20 years later, they called me to keynote their national convention. Whoa. So there's Earl. So I hear him on the radio in 72. And in 74, when I started getting so active in the JCs, I said, this day job is not working for me, even though I'd gotten promotions and raises, and the job was a whole lot better at that time. A man came to me and he said, Jim, you ought to be selling Earl Nightingale's training programs. I said, he has training programs? Yes. Okay, so first I had to buy a $560 audio cassette library of Earl Nightingale, because if I wasn't willing to pay retail for it, how could I expect them to? So that was the deal, and I worked out a payment plan and did it. And then I listened fanatically to the tapes. And then the man who told me about that, a man named Harold Gash, he said, Jim, you're now full-time as a salesperson for Nightingale Conant. I want you to go door to door to businesses and sell them these motivational libraries. Well, now let's put this in context. The year is 1974 when I started selling the tapes. In 74, there were no human resource departments. There was personnel. That was it. And it was usually a person. Or it was a person who that was also their job. You know, so Leanne over in accounting also is our personnel person. You know, or Jim in shipping does personnel. Well, when I went to call on a company and I had this $560 library of audio cassettes that were motivational, I had like 5 sales to make. Adult learning is useful beyond college. Really? No, seriously, adults can learn. Go figure. All right, so I had to sell that concept, adult learning. Second, I had to sell the value of soft skills. What are soft skills? Communication skills, time management, planning, organization, selling, and, you know, skills that aren't directly hardware related. So I had 2 sales there, right? Then I had to sell them on learning it from a guy that's not in their business, Earl Nightingale. It's the guy on the radio. Oh, well, yeah, okay, I'm still with you. Give me more reasons, right? Then I had to sell them on buying the cassettes. Then I had to sell them a cassette player and batteries. I did. I carried cassette players and batteries with me so I could complete the sale. And I did okay at that, and then I got the call from the JC's headquarters and took that job. But my career advanced a lot after selling Nightingale's tapes. I started doing my own training programs when I left the JC's. And then I met a man, a college professor in San Diego, and he and I decided to become business partners. And I was tired of living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I wanted to live in San Diego, so I did. And we formed Cathcart, Alessandra and Associates, Dr. Tony Alessandra. And we developed an audio training program that was the first ever audio training program commercially offered on the subject of personality types. Today you could find 2,000 of them by the end of the day. But back then nobody was talking about that in an audio form. There were a couple of books out there. And so Tony and I had both been teaching it certified by other organizations, but we formed our own little training program. And one day I'm sitting in my office in San Diego and the phone rings, an unexpected phone call. Hello, this is Earl Nightingale. May I speak to Jim Cathcart? Oh my gosh. I mean, I almost had a stroke. My hero was calling me. He said, Mr. Cathcart, I read an article of yours. I think it would be a good audio program. I said, well, sir, that article is an audio program. He said, send it to me. We publish those. Oh, believe me, I know. So I sent it to him, and he said, I like it. If you'll re-record it to our standards, we will publish it. In 1984, Nightingale Conant published Relationship Strategies by me and Tony Alessandra, and sold $3.5 million worth in the first 2 years. So we went from obscurity to international sensation virtually overnight. Now consider for a moment, I heard Earl on the radio. A couple of years later, I started selling his training materials. 10 years later, he was selling mine. That's a pretty big journey. Wouldn't you agree? Okay. NSA, National Speakers Association. While I was at the JC's headquarters, I joined NSA. NSA, as I mentioned, is about 3,500 professional speakers and authors and trainers and comedians and performers of various types and researchers and consultants, but it's people who get paid for standing in front of a group and delivering their message. So I joined NSA when they had 200 members. Went to my first NSA convention in Louisville, Kentucky in 1978, and I didn't have much money. I was brand new in the business, and I was getting speeches because I was making a lot of calls, but I was getting paid like $100 or maybe $500, sometimes $1,000 for a big all-day training program. And I went to Louisville to this convention, and they're all my heroes. There's Zig Ziglar, who was a new rock star on the circuit at the time, and all these other big names that I knew. And I found that when I walked up to their little circle where they're standing and talking, they opened the circle and included me. And they'd say, "Hey, who are you? Tell us about yourself." And thank heavens I had the presence of mind not to. I gave them a quick, polite answer and then asked them a question about themselves, because I was there to learn, not to promote myself. And they accepted me, gave me assignments. I did all kinds of grunt work, moving tables and chairs and putting up signs and whatever was needed. And that got me even more accepted. And so they said, "Hey, we're doing showcase talks. You want to do 5 minutes?" Yeah. So I got up and I did my little speech for 5 minutes, and I'll tell you later what that was about. And went on through the ranks, became national president. NSA grew to thousands of members, and I was inducted in the Speaker Hall of Fame and received the Cavitt Award, which, it's interesting, Speaker Hall of Fame in NSA is called Council of Peers Award for Excellence. And this is the ring they give you, or you buy. And 5 of those are given a year, and you apply for it. You're nominated, and then you fill out all the materials and send it in. And so that's something that you directly work as an arrow to get, right? I got that, but in 1993, I got an unexpected phone call. And they said, "Jim, are you going to be at the banquet tonight with your family?" Of course, I'm past president. Yeah, front row. Okay, just wanted to confirm. Well, what was that about? So I go there that night, and they present me the Cavitt Award, the statue. And that's one person per year, and it's a big, big deal in that industry. So, wow. I mean, that was a major moment in my life, right? That's me on the end. This was a more recent photo, but that's the nature of the event, okay? Now, this is Toastmasters International when I got the Golden Gavel in 2001 from Joanna McWilliams, who was the president. As I mentioned, I wasn't a Toastmaster. I wasn't marketing to Toastmasters, trying to get on their program. I got an unexpected phone call from a guy named Terrence McCann. He was the executive director of Toastmasters International, their full-time guy. And he had previously been program manager in charge of leadership training at the USJC's national headquarters, the job I used to have. He also was an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling in the Munich Games. So he called me and said, "We want you to keynote our 95 convention." So then he called me again and said, "You've been selected in 2001 for the Golden Gavel." Wow. And then 3 months ago, I was driving on Route 620, and phone rang, and I answered, and it was an unexpected phone call from Daniel Rex, the president of Toastmasters International, the paid guy. And he said, "We'd like to have you back." And so a couple of weeks ago in Nashville, I had this magical, wonderful moment with all those folks, and it was truly, truly thrilling. So I really have been a Toastmaster at a wedding, but not in the more traditional sense as a member, right? So I got an unexpected phone call. Do you see a pattern? In 2014, I was at the NSA San Diego convention, and I got a quick call from Roger Dawson, a colleague of mine. And he said, Jim, you know, I've been doing a lot of tours of China. I have a man that wants to meet you, Dr. David Chu. And I wanted to be sure that you're going to be at our big reception event tonight. So Dr. Chu came up. We met, and he said, I've been following you for years. I've been to the NSA conventions. I come over from China and meet with all my speakers. He said, I manage 10 speakers in China, and they're all world masters. And I've been watching you, and I want you to join our group. One of our members is old and retiring. I said, I'm in, but am I worthy? Who you have? He said, well, Brian Tracy and Bob Proctor and Jay Abraham and Mark Victor Hansen, co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and Tom Hopkins, sales trainer, and he named off all these kind of big deal speakers. And I want you. And I said, well, what about like Zig Ziglar or somebody like that? And he said, well, first off, Zig doesn't want to travel to China, and you're a little younger, so you're the guy. Okay. From 2015 to 2019, I made 19 separate round trips to China, all of them first class, plus a companion ticket. He also paid me for 4 speeches minimum per year, the full day fee for 4 speeches minimum per year, or per trip, excuse me, not per year. So I went to China 19 times, ended up speaking in 23 major cities. In the year 2019 alone, I did 6 round trips from the US to China for 71 days in country. Typical speech, 1,000 to 3,000 people with an interpreter. 6 hours. 6-hour speeches to thousands of people, none of whom speak English. And so my Kitty, my interpreter, and I became really, really good friends. And I taught her how to think American. She taught me how to think Chinese. And it really, really, really worked. So I would come home literally with stacks of $100 bills. They paid in cash. And I mean, it was something. And whenever I'd go out shopping to buy gifts for my family, Dr. Chu, David, would say, I got this. And he would buy it. And I'd say, no, it's for my family. No, I got this. So every time I came home from China, I'd call my son and say, bring the kids. It's Chinese Christmas again. And we would get over at my house and give out all these fabulous gifts. So what a ride, right? Now, it was a heck of an experience, a wonderful life-enhancing experience. But it was at a point, where I thought my career had plateaued. I thought, I did all this and then kind of leveled off like that and continued to grow, but it was kind of getting more like this in 2014. And then, boom, and it took off again. And so I re-engaged all the engines and got me back in the game big time. How did I get the gig? People say, how do you go international? How do you break into the international market? Become a good person and then agree to speak. Literally is how it happened. I didn't get there by working my international plan. I got there through an unexpected phone call. Every major breakthrough of my career has come through a surprise where it sought me. The reason it sought me is I did all this work in between. So you can't get by without doing the work, shooting for your goal, working toward your goal. But as you develop the right qualities, instead of just achieving the milestones, as you cultivate the qualities that make them say, Mike, I like me better when I'm with you. When you get people thinking our business, our meeting, our world is going to be a little better if he or she's in the room, that's when you know this is the right plan. You've proven your premise, right? So I got an unexpected phone call. Go figure. Dr. Nito Kubain of High Point University in North Carolina called me and said, Jim, this was 2021. He said, Jim, do I remember correctly you don't have a college degree? Correct. I'm a college professor at California Lutheran University. I teach in their executive MBA program. I've written 2 college textbooks. Don't have a bachelor's degree. We'd like to fix that. Would you? He said, yep, we want you to come to North Carolina in September and be part of a very big event we're having here, and we're going to bestow on you an honorary business degree. So at age 75, I got a college degree. How did I get my college degree? The magnet. That's the key. So the purpose of what you do and what I do, whether we're in speaking or in any other field, is to make life better for people. This is me coaching a young guy named Michael, coincidentally, Michael, who was competing in an oratorical contest, a speaking contest, and I listened to him give his little 5-minute speech, and it was good, and it was in English. And I said, come here. We were in front of an audience. I said, come here. I said, next time when you go up there and you do the appropriate gestures and you greet the people and the protocols that are required, as soon as you finish that, I want you to do this. And put your weight on one or the other leg and say, when I was choosing what to speak on today, I selected this because da-da-da-da, and tell them how it has meaning to you. And then step back here and deliver your speech. He did, and the audience said it was twice as powerful. Same speech, all he did was personalize it so they related to him, not as a delivery vehicle, but as a person. So, this is the journey. All these stories I've told you, JC's, Nightingale, NSA, Toastmasters, China. What's the lesson? What have you gleaned from all that?
You have to do the work.
Pardon?
You have to do the work.
Got to do your work.
You made that decision sitting there, with all that time. Then that was your focus.
As a clerk at the housing authority. And I had no idea what was possible. None. I mean, if you'd taken most of these experiences and said, are any of these on your goals list? Nope. Dreams? No, I didn't even know they existed. I just wanted to do what that guy on the radio was doing because it felt so right.
It was the seed.
Yeah, there you go, the seed, the acorn. My book out there, The Acorn Principle. And I always have, somewhere in close proximity to me, an acorn. This one's made of pewter. What did you get from it, Tom?
First, be a great person. You can be a great speaker, but if you're not a good person, then if the audience doesn't perceive that, oh, he's one of us.
That's right. Yeah, a great speaker, great orator might deliver a very impressive presentation, but that's all it is. It's just like doing an impressive slideshow, or creating a movie clip or something. It's not real. It's just data dump, right? But when you are the kind of person that they admire, or they feel that you admire them, which is even more important, then they're open to listening. And that's been a key for me. Executives come, I do a lot of speech coaching, and people come to me and they say, look, I know how to speak. I've given lots of speeches. It's just that this one's kind of big. And I need to get this right. And I say, okay, tell me what your message is. But next, let's set that aside. Who's your audience? Why do they care, or why should they care? And then we go into that. Yeah, but I want to, why should they care what you've got to say about this? So once we've established that, everything else is committee work. I can work out all the rest of it once I'm there. But until I'm there, it's just a show. It's just a performance, right? Okay? So when you focus on the speech, you become more nervous. When you focus on the audience and how to be of value to them, not only do you become less nervous, they become more accepting and more eager to learn from you. So that's what I do in all the training that I do. True. Yeah, I didn't walk away from it and say, nah, it's too big for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even though it may have been big at the time, you still did it anyway.
And a huge amount of this is showing up. If you don't show up and put yourself at risk, and that second part's as important as the first part, if you don't put yourself at risk, you're not going to grow. Because growth always happens outside your habit patterns, your comfort zone, outside.
And being the person, like you see, it's every time that you speak and what you talk about, you've also done, and it's who you are.
Yeah.
And you're there for the audience to give what you've learned, and so it kind of goes full circle.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, Tom?
My mentor, Dick Saman, gave me the best.
Dick Saman? I knew Dick Saman well.
You did.
Wow. He lived in Houston, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said, before you step on that platform, remember one thing, Tom. They're not here for you. You're here for them.
That's right.
And that just
Totally.
changed the whole
Dr. Kenneth McFarland was one of my mentors and heroes, and I got a chance to meet him. And I asked him one time, I said, when you're up there on the stage, you're such a great orator. I said, do you, as you're sitting at the head table, which thank heavens we no longer do, the head tables are displaying the eating and listening skills of the leaders, right? So and I figure that's kind of a useless thing to do, so just have reserved seating down front, but leave the stage for the one you want people to look at. Anyway, I said, when you're up at the head table looking at the audience, do you think like loving thoughts toward them? I said, I actively do that. I look at them and I think, I love you. As a person, I care about you. He said, no, Jim, I don't do that. I study them. And they know I'm studying them. I thought, okay, that's clever, and I'll go with that. But that's pretty good. Mike, what did you get? What was the lesson that came from all that for you?
Well, I agree with Tom. I think the key is in being a good person and letting your reputation do a whole lot of the heavy lifting for you. If people know, oh, I've heard about this guy. He's supposed to be a really, really great person.
Yeah, and then you got to live up to it. You know, you show up and you behave like a jerk, and they say, hey, Leanne, you were wrong. That's not what he's like at all. The guy's kind of a, you know, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Mike?
It's intriguing to hear your story and to see that you're really living your passion. Your life and what you pursue is really your passion.
Truly, it is my passion. Yeah. And to this day, I mean, people say, are you retired? I say, I'll tell you what, you can come to my retirement party. They might call it a funeral, but it'll be my as long as my head and my you know, as long as my head and my voice work, I don't see any reason not to continue to do this because I love what I'm doing. Yes?
It comes across that you care.
Thank you, Gary.
Up on the stage and you're talking,
Uh-huh.
you can deliver a technical great speech, but it comes across that you actually care about what you're talking about, and you care that the people get it, and you care that it actually happens to them.
There you go.
Care. And
Thank you.
That's what really counts.
What Gary said is, for those of you watching on the video, caring is the key to this whole thing. It's like the Zig Ziglar quote, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. He didn't say it that way. He said how much you know and how much you care. But once you show them that you genuinely care about them, you're going to get there. Yes. What about you?
Well, once again, you're living out your character. You can't really fake that unless you're a great, great actor.
And it really does matter that off stage and on stage, same person. You know, I mean, you're bigger than normal life up here, but it ought to be absolutely consistent. When you're backstage, you're not chewing out the technicians. You're realizing they help you look good, and they're your hero. And you treat them with dignity, you know, and the person that drove you to the meeting, and all the people with no power. People with no power deserve to be treated with great respect by people with power. Dr. Richard Halbgewachs, what have you gleaned from today's message, sir?
You know, Jim, the thing that just stands out to me is to make life better for people.
Yep.
And, you know, it's just
Truly.
And so when you're up front, it's not about, you know, who you are. That comes through. You love people. You desire to bless people.
Yeah.
And I'm taking that home with me.
Outstanding. Good. Thank you. So as I was saying, in 1978, this literally is a photograph taken at the first NSA meeting I ever went to in Louisville, Kentucky, when I did that little 5-minute showcase speech. Notice the title, Become the Person Who Achieve Your Goals. And notice 46 years, 3,300 speeches later, having done all the things that speakers have on their dream list, my message is still the same. When I delivered that message, I had never been paid more than $1,000 for a full day program, let alone for a speech. I had never achieved a certificate or an award or anything in speaking. I was a brand new member of NSA. I did not serve on the board of directors, didn't chair a committee or hold any power or authority at all. I had very little money in the bank. When I went to that Louisville convention, I couldn't afford the $40 for the special luncheon. And so I stood in the hallway eating a hot dog from a street vendor, listening through the door to Zig Ziglar give a talk, with Earl Nightingale in the audience being bestowed Speaker Hall of Fame. So this guy, interestingly, discovered the right message before this guy arrived. And thank heavens I was blessed to get that information when I did. By the way, this QR code here, I put together a professional presentation package of videos. I took keynote speeches, video lessons that I recorded in 2019 in China and more recently here, and I put it all together into a package for advanced speaker skills, and it's priced at $997. But if you do this QR code between now and Sunday, you can acquire it, or someone else you know can acquire it for $297, so $700 off. And that gets them the full 26 videos plus access to me, plus that'll put them in the loop to be in on some webinars and other things that I'll be doing later on. So, you know, when you see that, capture that and feel free to share it, but tell the people that offer expires on Sunday. Goes back to normal pricing. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the speech I gave to Toastmasters. Thank you. Thank you.